what's your advice for guys who don't know what to say to a woman? You know, those female looking things, you know, if you're a man, there's this other part of the species that have boobs and vaginas, in case you've never seen them.
I mean, I would say go out and talk to them and accept the fact that you don't know what to say to them, but also realize that the more you talk to them, the more you'll realize what to actually say to them. So that guy who's asking this question, he's aware of the world of dating, coaching, or seduction, or whatever you want to call this. He knows that there's places that he can go to online. He knows that there's videos he can watch. He knows there's articles he can read. He knows there's coaches he will coach him. Yet he's still asking that same question. Just go out and actually do it. Again, if we use the video game analogy, what's going on is that this guy is so worried about what will happen if he fails speaking to the woman. He's built it up to be this massive thing where he can't talk to a woman and not have it go well, because that just means he's the lowest of the low. Whereas if he actually just does it, it ain't going to be that bad. Maybe she's going to look at him and think he's weird. Maybe she will. Okay, it will sting a bit, but you're not actually going to die. And if you keep doing it, you will get better. That's what that guy needs. Because that guy who's asking that question or making that statement, he does know how to find information. He does. He's just not taking action. And that's basically what he needs to do. Just grow a pair and face the discomfort. That's pretty much it.
I'd say sign up to my program. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think like it's I agree here. Is we spoke about failure before, we spoke about the video game before. You need to be able to practice this. So if you don't know what to say, pick something, try out and see what happens is number one. Number two is keep in mind like what you're saying shouldn't be the hyper focus at the beginning. Really, it should be what mindsets are really holding me back from going and putting myself in front of a goal. They're the first few things. Like, it doesn't matter. You can go up and say, hi, I think you're really cute, right? I don't give a fuck. Say whatever you want. But ask yourself, what's stopping me from doing that? That's what needs to be addressed. Number two, the next thing would need to be subcomms. So how am I saying this? I should have maybe a little bit of a smile, hold eye contact. I should speak loud. I should not fidget. I should have open body language. That would be my next thing. It's later on down the track. Once you get over the mindsets, once you're approaching women, once you're getting to the point where you have good stuff, then you can start thinking, okay, what is the optimal thing to say? Now, for guys that might find it a little bit easier to have something prepared to get over the nerves, that's fine. I mean, you can go to fucking all our channels. You can Google shit. You can find so many different opens or whatever. That's fine. Do that. But yeah, I agree here. The premise really needs to be address the mindsets and have the right subcomms and think about the optimal what to say later on.
Mike?
Yeah, so I think AA prevents a lot of people from actually coming up with things to say, just because if you're under such pressure and intensity and anxiety, I feel like your brain just shut down, right? So just by having a volume going out consistently, lower the threshold in terms of pressure that you need to output. Also, I think a lot of guys, when they go into game, they have this high barrier of what they think they need to say for the girls to accept them, right? But if you think about it, 90% of conversation is just really basic stuff, maybe 10% sprinkled of, teasing, banter, witty stuff. So I think lowering the threshold of what you need to say, being okay with just saying regular stuff will help you not run out of content. But also, improv comedy is amazing. I always recommend everybody to take improv. When I first started out, I actually convinced my manager to pay for my improv class. I told him it was going to help me make better PowerPoint presentations, etc. Did classes 1, 2, and 3. Being able to create associations, right? So I think a lot of guys, if you look at naturals and they're asking the same questions as a regular dude, right? Guys that are good with women, they're still asking basic questions. Where are you from? What are you guys celebrating, right? The magic comes when after the girl answers the question. A lot of times it's a one-word question. It's how you respond to those answers, right? The types of associations you make with the answers, right? So it's huge in that. And then drills. A lot of people don't really do drills at home. I think if you have a good balance of infield and drills. That's also important. What I used to do and what I tell clients is do word association drills. Okay. So take a random word generator. You can go online, have it give you a random word. Just set a timer for like a minute and you just talk about that word for a minute. And by doing these drills and then also having association games. So you pick a word and then you pick 5 different associations of that word, right? So for example, you could be like blood, vampire, then you could be like, Hollywood. And then quickly you could take, one subject and you blow it up into 10 different threads. And then the long-term thing is just having an interesting life, right? So long-term goals could be more hobbies, traveling, sign up for new classes. And those are going to take months and years. So I think you have short-term goals, midterm goals, and then more long-term action items to essentially help your verbals and, have better conversations.
I like that. I did a bit of stand-up comedy initially, when I was kind of starting out. I had no fucking, it was like completely fucking new to me, and I didn't really rehearse or anything. But my first experience, there were quite a lot of comedians there who do it professionally, and they said, "Oh my God, that was actually amazing for a first timer." And they said their first time was fucking terrible and shit like that. I got too cocky in my second time. I didn't even fucking prepare anything really, and it sucked. So I had a really good one and a really shit one. But it was a very good experience in just jumping in and doing that, because when I was younger, I had a problem. Like I'm the last fucking person I would have imagined to have my own fucking podcast or book. Like Ciaran here, he's the guy who convinced me to write a book, and he's part of Game Global when we're doing these videos. I was not the guy known for fucking writing or for fucking talking. I was fucking terrible at all of these fucking things, but I worked on it. And if we were talking about verbal games specifically, one thing I did, which was extremely helpful, aside from like an improv class or stand-up comedy, going out multiple nights per week, night game to a nightclub, which is something I genuinely love doing. I would immerse myself in these smoking areas and I would just fucking stand there. Sometimes I would go in the club, out the club to the smoking area and repeat that. But I did find sometimes I was there standing for hours, just talking, non-fucking stop. And over the course of quite a few weeks or months, or a few months, I suppose, my voice went from really weak, because I naturally have a very weak voice, to much better. I could actually vocally project my voice. I could talk for much longer than before. All these other things, just the matter of practicing on a weekly basis in
Are
a
you saying,
relatively loud environment.
So you saying that all those cigarettes actually improved your vocal cords? Is that what you're saying? When you were doing the cancer game?
It may have been a side effect, but yes, we used to call
exposure.
it, we used to call it cancer game. That's the term that I coined myself. Ironically, my wife has cancer. But we did want to, there were a few people who were criticizing me for calling it that. And my defense was, well, it's a smoking area, it's gonna happen. But we did actually get a cancer patient come out one time, and he said he has just been recovering, hasn't been out for 2 years or something like that, and he had no hair, hadn't been out for such a long time, and he was just like so curious and was thanking me for like putting this thing together, because we were doing these night game sessions every week for the groups years ago. But that's just a funny story I haven't thought for a while. But yeah,
there were 2 things that helped me. So I don't think everybody's like this, but for me personally, if I'm out and I am moving to the music and just bouncing my head, I get out of my head and into the environment. And that automatically makes me more talkative and more witty and more engaged in a conversation. Whereas if I just like this, I'm more inside my head and I'm now not paying attention to things that the girls around me are saying. So something I used to do is make a point of actually moving, not in a stupid way, but in a way as calibrated as music playing, and I do some of that. Another thing is being aware of the environment. So what I found is that if you don't know what to say, what's usually going on is you are inside your brain and you're second guessing everything that you could say, but you're not actually paying attention to what's going on around you. So you're not paying attention to the fact that both of the two girls are dressed like Mario and Luigi. You haven't really paid attention to that. You haven't paid attention to the fact that the new Kendrick Lamar Drake diss song, They Not Like Us, is actually playing. And Drake's a pedophile, apparently. And what do they think of that? You're not paying attention. You're not paying attention to the fact that there's McDonald's wafting through the air and maybe you might like a cheeseburger. So paying attention to what your senses are picking up, really, it's just like it. There is constant fodder for conversations all around you, and if you just pay attention to that and take your focus external rather than internal, then you can never run out of things to say.
Yeah, agree. And also just being genuinely curious about people. And when you ask questions that you actually care about. I do find guys end up making people just have a habit of saying the same things over and over again. You know, a lot of guys use the same routines or they ask the same questions. And you could be doing game for a whole year and it's like your verbals are still the same. Like you're just saying the same shit, right? For example, I just had a student, he opened a girl from Mexico. I'm like, all right, where in Mexico did she come from? And he was like, I don't know. I'm like, how do you talk to a girl like for 30 minutes and you don't know where in Mexico? I mean, is it Guadalajara? Is it Mexico City? Is it, is it somewhere in Jalisco? Or like a sub-geography or a stereotype or, if you're meeting a girl from Canada, the difference between Surrey and Richmond and Vancouver proper. And I think a lot of guys just say the same things over and over again. It's like, okay, let's break it down. And I like to find things where it could apply to a future set, right? So, for example, in Vegas, we get a lot of Canadians, right? During the summer, I would say probably 30% of the tourists are Canadian sets. And they're the best. They're attractive, they're friendly, they're down to party. And so, like, it probably makes sense to learn about Canadian geography. So I always hound my guys to okay, learn about the different cities, learn about the different
come back and name 10 provinces or you're kicked off the fucking program.
Fucking Nova Scotia, Halifax,
hey,
fucking New Brunswick. I literally one time I was like, you know what? There's so many Canadians. I just took out the Canada map and I was like trying to memorize all the provinces and that way, just spending 10 minutes on Google can make your sets way better, right? Because the average guy in a club, I'm sure Canadians get this all the time, like seeing another dumb American that doesn't know shit about Canada, that probably thinks that people live in igloos. If you just had one unique line or one good cold read, you'd probably stand out more than 95% of guys who know nothing about Canada, right? So just reviewing your own sets and just spending some time on the internet, it makes you stand. Yeah, you're already way ahead of the game.
You mentioned the Mexican women, for example, just that one tiny piece of information, Mexico. There's so much that I can think of that compared to when I could have before. For example, she's a woman, she's from Mexico. Oh my God, does she fucking cook? You said which part of Mexico is she from?
Yeah.
What kind of Mexican food can she cook for me? That's not only a conversation, that's also a date idea too. So there's a function to it, a purpose to it. So much you can go from there. I really like that. And you're talking about Canadians, and we got an Australian here. Here's the funny thing that depending on what question I get, I like to say, if someone asks if I'm American, I say, haven't you fucking learned it's been a while since I fucking said this. Haven't you fucking learned the difference yet? Why don't you ask every American sounding person if they're Canadian? Then at least you only offend the fucking Americans. And same goes for Australia. If you're not sure if they're from New Zealand or Australia, just ask if they're from New Zealand. That way you only piss off the Australians. Now, the logic here is New Zealand and Canada, they're the ones with the smaller populations. So there's a bit of irony in that. So you're only pissing off the Americans or the Australians. Well, that's more likely to happen then. They're the asshole ones. Which is another kind of fucking sense of humor to it. But there's so much you can fucking go to with this, and so much you can learn from. Like for me, moving to London was such a big fucking change. I met someone who claimed she was from North Korea. I was, what the fuck? I never expected to meet a North Korean this fucking quickly. You can just learn from so many cultures, especially if you're in that kind of international city. That's not only an opportunity to learn, but an opportunity to enhance your verbal game in so many ways. But, you know.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
by
it
the way,
sounds...
sorry, I just want to say,
No, go
I
for it,
need to leave in like the next 15 minutes or so. So, whatever your next question is, if you could ask that quickly so I can answer it before I go, that would be great.
All right.
But you know, I don't really need to rush
any
you, but I do need to go.
any final
Yeah, I was just gonna tack on to
comments
that.
on
Like,
this?
it does seem the guys listening, it might seem somewhat like superficial, or it might seem like, hang on, I need to go study geography. Like, what the fuck? But I think it's important to know why, right? Like, if you are a girl, especially if you're from a country or a place that isn't that well known, keep in mind this girl's experience, especially in America, is going to be that zero people understand you, know where you're from, or if they do, they give you some stereotype that's not true. If you're that one guy that is like, oh, you're from this country, I know this about it, and it's actually a real true fact that isn't a stereotype, these girls will have that feeling of like, he understands me. Oh, damn. And that feels really nice to the girl. And you have an element of pre-selection too. If you're from a place like Russia or Ukraine, and then you come to America and the guy's like, oh, I know Ukrainians, okay? I've dated Ukrainians before. Now this girl's like, okay, damn. Not only does he understand where I'm from, but he probably understands what I like sexually or what I like in a dating sense. This guy's probably a little bit more dominant. He's dealt with like Russian girls that are a little bit more direct. So yeah, that's why it's important. Like you really have to put in that time, and you can just ask the girl, like, okay, you're Russian, I've never met one before. Like, hey, what's tell me more about it, right? Let me learn. Let's fuck. Okay, don't worry about this set. Fuck this off. But now the next Russian girl I speak to, damn, I'm gonna do so much better. So yeah, I think it can sound when you're listening to this as the guy at home, like I need to do what? But it's really important. You have to start learning more about the girl's culture.
Well,
Oh
okay.
yeah, you can even do
this leads me
language
on to
like
something.
you were saying Russia, for example. Ты понимаешь по-русски? You could learn part of their languages too.
Yeah.
Capisci italiano? You can learn even just the basics, and they have such fucking huge admiration for that. And it's useful in other ways too. Like I was in Tokyo like 2 fucking weeks ago, and there was a kid who was fucking lost, and a Japanese woman was like asking him questions, and I identified he was speaking Russian. So I helped try to translate between Russian, Japanese, and English for this fucking lost kid who was looking for his dad. It was like, I guess he fucking went back to Siberia. I don't know.
But you want to know
Yeah,
something that
Tosan or
guys
Boston?
would do with doing? It's like, so one way to make a girl feel like you understand her is to actually give a crap about who she is as a person and be genuinely curious and interested in that. Like an example being a time I met this woman who was a dancer, and I said, you have the posture of a dancer. And it was like there was something so almost unnaturally perfect about the way she was standing. Yes, she was hot, but it was literally her posture. It was incredible. I mentioned that, and her mind was absolutely blown. This brings me on to something. So I'm actually coaching a woman right now. There's a woman who I'm actually coaching. And doing so is showing me a lot of the differences that men and women have to go for, but also a lot of the BS that women deal with as well. So on dating apps, it's like men never, ever, ever, they don't care about anything other than what she looks like. And she wants to find a man that she genuinely connects with. But it's all body, body, body. Are you fit? Body, 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 body. Do you want to fuck? Body, 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 body. When guys are meeting women in clubs, they're taking that same mindset as well. And they forget that they're actually in front of a human being who maybe likes tennis, maybe has desires to join Greenpeace, maybe she's sad because someone was bereaved in her family. You forget all of that, and it's just, I want to get between those legs. Whereas if you actually think, all right, she seems like a conservative person. She seems like she's a very creative person. Look at the way she's put herself together. Look at how she's dressed, how she carries herself. I think she's an artist. Things like that. I find that even if you say to a woman, you look like X, even if you're wrong, the fact that you've taken the time to care and to be curious about who she genuinely is, that makes a huge impression.
You look pregnant. You look like a hooker. You look like a... And
yeah, the pregnancy one, that's the one I don't recommend that you do. Other than that, yeah.
Female understanding is huge. I think that's the biggest, probably underrated way to build value with a girl. So yeah, if you notice she's 8 months pregnant, let her know. It's no, honestly, I really think it's the most underrated thing. Yeah.
My wife, I fucking witnessed this like this fucking week. My wife straight up said to another woman, a friend of hers, granted, why are you so fat? I was like, what the fuck? I said, I'm pretty sure she's pregnant, and I was correct. But my wife was just like so fucking.
Is that like a cultural thing? Where's your wife from?
I don't know. Well, yeah, she's, if they're Latina, we have this term. It's called toxic Latina, and that's just how it is.
No, because I have an African friend, or used to have an African friend, and she would just like say, like, call people fat. She's like, oh, you look so fat. And I'm like, it's not a good thing to tell people. But apparently it's very cultural. Like it's not really like, at least this is what she told me, is it's not very like insulting where she's from. Like
my family is Jamaican. In Jamaican culture, bear in mind, Jamaicans are directly descended from Africans. It's incredibly common for people to just say shit about you. So you'll see your auntie, you haven't seen your auntie for like a year, and she'll be like, you put on weight, which means you've put on weight. Or let's say like we're a bunch of kids and we're in a Jamaican village. And let's say, Marcus, let's say you fell over and you lost your foot. Everyone would give you a nickname based on the fact that you've got no foot. Like footless Marcus or something like that. Like Jamaicans just don't give a shit at all. Things that might upset somebody in the West, it's like, this is the way it is. Deal with it. Grow a spine or fuck off.
I think it's great that some cultures like just aren't offended by anything. Just take Mexico, for example. It's like people dress in Mexican outfits, appropriate in so many different ways. But there was that guy who asked Mexicans, does this outfit offend you? None of the Mexicans said that's offensive. It was only the fucking college students. He's fucking fuck you fucking idiot. Go get a fucking refund on your tuition fees, you stupid fuck. But I'm so glad that my wife is from Peru. I can have this kind of banter with my own mother-in-law. It's like any other white person I know, if they had this kind of banter with their mother-in-law, they would be fucking killed. But my mother-in-law is obese, and I take the fucking piss out of her so much. It's so good. I was in Tokyo, and my day 2 in Tokyo, I go see these fucking sumo wrestlers practicing. Take a photo straight on Facebook, tag her in it. I would love to see these guys take on my mother-in-law. And listen, she cannot throw a fucking chancla all the way from Peru to Japan. So fucking safe. But we got that banter anyway. It's all fucking good.
They also do the chinky eye thing. I've gone on several dates where girls are like, oh yeah, Asian people and like that. First time I witnessed it, I was like, what the fuck is going on? And then I realized that they don't mean anything like It's not meant to be super derogatory.
Hey, Rook, I'm American. Have you seen that video? That was fucking hilarious. Got anything gluten free? Or whatever the fuck else. Anyway, what the fuck are we talking about now? Any other random comments before we go on to the next one?
I love how Ciaran was like, I need to go soon. Can we get to the next question? We just spoke 10 minutes about who knows what. Yeah, sure. Go for it, bro.
We covered everything. All right.